So here's the basics of what open R lane stands for. We believe that general purpose lanes are a better solution than managed lanes. And here's why. One, the I-77 precedent, which certainly many of you have heard and we'll hear a little later tonight. Toll lanes carry a hefty cost. This project's going to cost $120 million more than a general purpose lane solution. Tolls are expensive. Talked about $20 per ride to ride the I-77 toll lanes from exit 36 to exit 11. We've got in Miami, $1.50 per mile. In Atlanta, they broke records of, I believe, over $11 on the entire stretch. We'll talk about that in a minute. Road capacity. Toll lanes are intend to provide a fraction of the road capacity in order to maintain a speed of 45 miles per hour. There are safety concerns with merging between high-speed roads and slower roads. Trust me, I deal with this every day on I-77. Right at the 485 entrance, right in there. If you come off of there, you got people waiting to get onto 485 from 77 on the right lanes. On the left lanes, they're going 70 miles an hour. Trying to merge in is already a problem. Imagine merging from a 70 mile an hour road into a road where congestion is stuck at 5 miles an hour. We've seen a number of failures of HOT lanes. And the reality is perceived HOT lane benefits do not match reality. Sorry, reality is wasted. All right, so the I-77 precedent, I'm going to skip some of this because I'm sure Jim will provide quite a bit of color on it. But it is the only North Carolina toll lane project that's reached the contract stage with toll lane, with a public-private partnership with Cintra, which is a division of Ferrovial, a Spanish company. So as we get ready to look at I-485, as they talk about a summer 2017 contract, while for 485, building the additional lane is not something where we need a third party. Managing that lane may need a third party. We don't know. I-77 South, we expect that building and managing would require a third party. And so when you look at the contract on the north that brought most of the 40 people to City Council. The contract in the north has brought 6,000 members to widen I-77, and Mr. Noss could say if I've got the number right, and has brought plenty of consternation as well as lawsuits. That is the precedent for any future contracts, because it is the only contract. And while it is a public-private partnership for building, not just managing, it still is the precedent. And it's a 50-year contract with non-competes, with penalties to cancel. And it involves a company that's been accused of corruption and has had a number of project failures throughout this country. So something that those of us here need to be paying attention to, need to be aware of. All right, so as I keep going through the points of why general purpose lanes are a better solution. Hefty cost. The project cost estimate is $203 million. Add that 8 miles of actual lane asphalt and a 17-mile toll lane. In addition, the project would include 3 direct flyovers. These are direct access roads, so that essentially bridges that fly into those toll lanes. And of course, as we said, it involves the ingress and egress into and out of the lanes and the ability to collect the toll fare. $203 million. The additional construction is approximately the same as the construction that was completed for Phase 1, which cost $83 million. So the question is, what's the extra $120 million for? Again, that's the flyovers that are only for the HOT lanes and the actual toll technology. We have not seen a revenue study. I have not seen anything that describes whether or not there will be toll revenues that would produce enough to cover $120 million worth of cost that is otherwise unnecessary. And again, as we talked about before, and I'll bring it into the next slide, toll lanes are essentially a regressive tax in a lot of respects. Not a tax if it's a toll lane, because you can choose. I agree with that. But it's regressive from the standpoint that choosing it costs additional money. So who can make that additional money tends to be the more wealthier people. In D.C. area, they call them Lexus lanes. In fact, again, as I mentioned, we've already seen this referred to as premium service. So while it may be an optionality, it's providing an option only to those who can afford to spend extra money to not sit in traffic. So those who are trying to get to a job to make more money for their families would be stuck in general purpose lanes because it would cost them a significant amount of extra money just to get around the traffic. And as I said, road capacity becomes a question. In El Paso, Texas, the HOT lane has shown 6% use for only 3 hours every day. So the other 21 hours of a day, that lane is essentially not even used. We'll talk about the Texas opinion of roads here, HOT lanes, in just a second. As I mentioned earlier, HOT in Atlanta hit a record $12 for a single 16-mile trip in November. It's interesting because if you look up record toll pay for Atlanta, you'll see about 5 or 6 articles because the newspaper will update you every single time the record gets broken. And over the last couple of months, that record keeps getting broken. And again, the reason why this happens, it's demand-based pricing in managed lanes. Demand-based pricing means if congestion is heavy in the general purpose lanes, then the managed lane price will have to keep going up and up and up in order to ensure that fewer people get in there, such that its speed is at least 45 miles per hour. In order to guarantee that speed, you need to keep the capacity at only a certain level. And there is no cap, to my understanding, in the current contract with Cintra on how much they can charge. In most cities, there are caps. And so that's an important aspect to consider. Again, Miami drivers paid $10.50 a toll on 19 of 30 days this past September. That's $1.50 per mile on a 7-mile toll lane. Safety concerns, as we mentioned before, when you have roads, you have a lane going 70 miles an hour, there will be ingress and egress locations throughout where you can come off to go to the exits. And at those locations, you might have somebody driving 70 miles an hour. It's a single toll lane on 485. You might have somebody driving 70 miles an hour trying to get into congested traffic that is bumper to bumper. That will create traffic concerns in both sets of lanes. Toll lane failures. We've seen a lot of toll lane failures in this country. The Texas House Transportation Chair recently indicated that their intention is to end their experiment with HOT lanes. This is often touted as the best example of HOT lanes, but yet the House of Representatives is getting ready to stop this strategy. The Corona Crawl, this is an infamous one from the 90s. Essentially here, the county had to repurchase their express toll lane from their third-party private operators. And they were forced to expand the road itself with general purpose lanes in order to deal with the actual congestion problem that had not been solved by those express lanes. Virginia canceled its $1.4 billion contract on US 460, which was a third-party contract with Ferrovial. Again, the same contract, same company connected with Cintra. And we've had a number of others, including Indiana, which is the most famous, $3.8 billion contract with Cintra. That's gone bankrupt. South Carolina had the Southern Connector. California's had the South Bay Expressway. And in Virginia, you had the Pocahontas Parkway, where the asset has been essentially reduced to a value of 0. So what we hear all the time, well, what are the hot lane benefits? It provides an option. You're paid to guarantee a reliable travel time. It's another way to pay for your road. Even though we all pay for our roads in taxes. Yes, I understand the argument across everywhere that tax money is not enough. The gas tax is not providing enough money for infrastructure. But we all pay just the same way that those folks in Raleigh who are getting I-40 expansion, the same folks in Asheville who are getting I-26 expansion. And every time I drive on 85 headed up north, I see some kind of construction going on, Salisbury, wherever it may be. I-45 always seems to be worked on. Free lanes, not tolled lanes. As we go to reduces congestion, this is the other comment that we hear all the time, reduces congestion. As I was talking about before, this one gets very difficult. The only thing that they often is point to say how it reduces congestion when it in fact does not provide more road capacity. So by definition, it doesn't provide more road capacity, right? So the only way in which it could reduce congestion is if it truly incentivizes carpooling and keeping cars actually off the road. So we look at incentivizing carpooling, bus and transit. Well, carpooling in this country has been going down steadily for the past 35 years. We were at 19.7% in 1980, and now we're under 10%. I can speak with experience. I carpool once or twice a week with my wife. Once or twice a month with my wife, because it's very challenging and difficult to be able to carpool at all. So to say that we're going to carpool instead of driving every single day is unrealistic. Yes, I understand the concepts about bus and transit, but let's be real, we have one transit option at this point in time in this area. These roads are being planned without the partnering transit projects having any funding. So where is the partnering transit option? It's not there, so how are you going to incentivize people into transit that doesn't exist? And lastly, addresses induced demand. So induced demand is the economic theory that says if you add supply, you will simply add demand. And essentially what this means from a roads perspective is that it says there is this belief that there's a one-to-one correlation, that if you add road capacity, you will simply fill it right back up with the same amount of cars that any other lane adds. Well, on 485, are we seeing this? 485 was expanded. And we're not seeing any massive congestion grow right back to the way it was. It's been a year. The argument back in the springtime when I brought this at the Kirkbo meetings was, give it time. The people will come off the back roads and they'll start using it. The traffic will be there again. It's not there. That should be, 485 should be an example to show that general purpose lanes do reduce congestion. The other thing is that induced demand is based on correlative evidence. The belief that you can track the amount of cars that have grown to a road and say, well, the cars have grown on that road at the same time that you added capacity. It doesn't factor in every other little bit. Same thing is correlation is not fact. And the fact is, if you have two lanes, and you add a general purpose lane, you will increase the road's capacity by 50%. That's a fact. If you add an HOT, a managed lane, you will increase capacity by less than 50%. That's a fact. And that's an important thing to consider when we talk about what these potential benefits could be. All right, so what do we need to do? Talk to your friends and neighbors. Tell them what you learned about tonight. Come join Open Our Lane Facebook group. Post articles and comments. Tell your friends to join. Add your friends and members. Please come to the Kirkbo meeting. We need more representatives there to continue to tell our elected leaders how we want them to vote. Email them in advance. Tell them to vote no. And vote. Get out and vote. Ensure that you are voting for the person who's going to hear your voice. And of course, keep up to date with what's going on and continue to be at these events and being active. So that's my presentation. I appreciate the time, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Puckett to share some additional information on I-77 North.
We're going to go with Scott.
We're going to go this way. We're going to Scott. All right, here we go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Rob, for that.